And that way I can just make sure everyone's has this the space. So with that, I'm going to lower my hand. Anyone have a comment or question, clarification for Kelly's or for Carol's question? Yeah, Kelly.
So we have a little bit of this problem because we're just getting started and we have very limited budget, right? We cannot hire Scrum Masters. I do have a dev manager with a lot of experience, and she's kind of the Scrum of Scrum Master. But what we end up doing, we do think it's important though to have a Scrum Master on all of the Scrum teams. So we train and empower one of the developers to act as Scrum Master, somebody who's a little bit more experienced in the process and has a lot of, experience in the organization. But I mean, that's the only answer we've been able to come up with.
Sunny?
Yeah, one of the things that I use sports analogies quite a bit. And the one that I always think of in this scenario is like you have a professional football team that's out there, and you have the head coach who is more like the agile coach. And then you have the individual position coaches, like you have the line coach, you have the running back coach, you have the receivers coach. So those are equivalent to what I would say the Scrum Master, where they're more in tune with the actual teams themselves and the details around what the teams are actually doing, where the agile coach has a broader understanding of where we want to go as an organization. So they're dealing with cultural type things and cultural type issues, which they then share down. But it's really the Scrum Masters that say, okay, I'm working with this team and I'm going to work in this particular way with this particular team, which the agile coach really wouldn't have that insight and be able to speak to it that way. So that's kind of the analogy that I try to take.
Thanks, Sonny. Elliot, I think you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my personal take on that situation is kind of motivated by an experience that I had back at IDEX, where I was a Scrum Master, but also a contributing developer. In fact, I was the architect and a Scrum Master for a team for about 6 months. My experience of that is, while it's normally considered to be an anti-pattern, like to have a developer be a Scrum Master, even worse for someone with professional authority in the technical space to also be kind of motivating, ceremonies and meetings and things. It can work, in my view, if there's a really good trust relationship already between everybody concerned, right? It can work. I've seen the ways it doesn't work, the way it falls down when there isn't that good trust relationship. So I would just be really carefully on the lookout for that. It may just be the boots on the ground practical reality that you can't hire a Scrum Master or a coach, but it's okay. Like, don't be disconsolate about it. Just be extra careful to make sure that you're really keeping an eye on the team dynamics. Would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Elliot. And Kim, you're up.
Yeah, I would reference actually, if you're doing Scrum, are you doing Scrum without a Scrum Master? With the framework calls out kind of key position roles that are kind of needed. You can rotate those out, have maybe 3 to 1. But I think you have to have, the Scrum guy really talks about doing Scrum, leaving Scrum with a PO, you have a Scrum Master and the team, and that comprises the entire team. Now, the Scrum Master, of course, can do some work. I mean, I do PBI work every time with the team, but also I guide the team, do velocity and help engage the team as a Scrum Master. But, sometimes we don't have a Scrum Master for every team. So we have maybe one Scrum Master for 3 teams, and we can scale it that way. But I think if you're doing Scrum, you're going to have a Scrum Master some way, some guiding somebody that's really intimately involved with the team, doing the retrospectives, getting the feedback, guiding the team in terms of the actual framework. And the Agile coaches are there. I think they know probably the theory, but I think you're going to have a more intimate engagement with the team, inform the team with a Scrum Master available. That's my 2 cents. I don't know.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate that. And Mr. Rodolitz.
Yeah, from a title point of view, it should be really hard to tell the difference between a really, really good Scrum Master and somebody who's called an Agile Coach. If you look at all the things a coach should be doing, Scrum Master should be doing similar things. There are coaching frameworks that you can look at that describe what a coach should be, that you can see where the elevation from a Scrum Master might be. In terms of the role, it's certainly easy to not just have a Scrum Master if you view the Scrum Master as the person running Scrum and running the meetings. I put in chat a list, the guy that I was really lucky, the guy I took my Scrum Master training from was very interested in teaching us the why. And somebody asked him after the class, what does a Scrum Master do all day? You know, it doesn't seem like we have a lot to do. And he very quickly came up with a list of like 42 things on a checklist. But I like the idea of thinking about what's the function the Scrum Master is supposed to do. And if you don't have a person in that role, then you need to make sure that those functions are being taken care of. There are teams that can do stand-ups without you. I mean, a coach or a Scrum Master should teach a team to do their stand-ups without a Scrum Master around. So think about the functions. If you don't have somebody there, then how are you going to make sure that the things that have to happen happen? And if you can make it happen, then it could work.
Good input. I was going to jump in and then I'll come back to Elliot. I should have raised my hand. So my experience, having been a Scrum Master for a number of years and then coaching afterwards, I look back and I feel some of the greatest genuine change happened when I was a Scrum Master, because I was intimately familiar with what they're working on. And I felt like those are the subtle shifts that really got changed when someone's like, well, no, that wouldn't work here. We can't do that. And if you're not close to the work, you're like, well, you sure? Yeah, we're sure. Okay. But if you're on the team, it's easy to be involved. But I've seen that happen. Or, the movements of the team members. And once a few team members get on board and the team really gets on board and they start getting results, it's just a huge help. And the things that are missed if you don't have cycles to spend at the higher level of, the cross-departmental things or the value stream areas and things we talk about in class, like culture and what are the business goals and keeping those tied together. Because I wouldn't imagine Scrum Masters doing those, although they're technically considered an organizational change agent. I just wonder how many cycles they get for that. But I do feel like some real genuine change at the team level doesn't happen without that Scrum Master. All right, and there we go. Elliot.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, a few sort of follow-on comments suggest themselves to me, but one is, if we look at, if we actually want to consider a Scrum Master being super team oriented, right, and we want to consider Agile coaches being more strategically oriented, if that's the language we want to adopt, then as an Agile coach, probably we want to practice more coaching up, right? Whereas a Scrum Master might want to focus more on coaching down, right? And to sort of build on, what you're talking about, Scott, in terms of the Scrum Master per se being intimately familiar with what their teams are doing and how that's going, and what they might further need, right, to do better incrementally. That's one distinction that suggests itself.
Thanks, Elliot. Speaking of the role, Kim's stepping out to attend the stand-up. So glad you joined, Kim. All right, I think, anyone else on that before we move it over?
No, I just said it's very helpful, thinking about, the different kind of levels, because it seems we're using a coach as a substitute, and I'm not finding that effective, but I was wondering, so it's helpful to think of it that way. So thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Great, appreciate that. And I'll leave it at this. One thing I could throw out there, Carol, is to look at path to agility at the team level and the amount of work there is to do at the team level. It's very clear and a lot of detail. Mm-hmm. I think it's helpful as a quick guide to complement what Ben posted, which is a great checklist, by the way. There's a lot. All right, I'll move that over to discussed. And then we have discussing the benefits of Agile to staff and stakeholders. Anything to add? Whose was this? Perhaps it was Kim's. No claim this is an orphan topic, but it got votes, so I guess we can still
Yeah.
discuss it. So I'll leave it at that. There's no
Yeah, it
one
might
here.
have been Kim because it was in
No,
our small
It was
group.
me. I'm sorry. My mute button was not working. So I have a Jabra, and every once in a while it gets out of sync with Zoom. So I'm pushing the mute and it's toggling back and forth. Sorry about that.
Go ahead. Anything to add to the context for this one, Callie?
I just think, and I know this is really basic, but it comes up. I mean, I've been rolling out kind of these changes now for a year and a half. I brought in trainers and coaches and everything in the beginning, all of that. And it seems like even just today in one of our kind of director level meetings, I had to have another discussion of why we are doing this. After a year and a half of discussing it, having training meetings, having all of it. And I don't know if I'm just doing something wrong, or I really am in an organization where I have particular people that are so resistant to this change that they're just not, they don't want to hear it.
Hard to imagine.
What'd you tell him today when that came up?
Oh, so what I told him today was more of a discussion around TDX, which is our ITIL kind of service management system, the TDX system versus what we're doing with, rolling out Agile and Scrum. And I tried to go into telling them how they're not going to have to actually do that anymore, that it's going to be part of the process. And then they're like, what are you talking about? And this is particular because people, the old way people did it was submit a ticket, like an incident ticket or a service request, and then it would just sit in the queue forever and no one would ever get to it. And then people would go back and forth in email, right? And you probably all have seen this, right? And what we're trying to do, because a lot of this stuff is development related, get all that work into the process. And I tried to explain, well, we're not going to have those issues anymore, right? Because everyone's going to be collaborating daily. They're going to be talking to each other. Issues are going to be, being raised every day. We're going to be doing sprint planning, so everyone's going to know what's going to be going on for the next 2 weeks, right? And so that was today's discussion. But everybody, not everyone, I'm not going to say that. Several people on the call acted like they'd never heard any of this before. So and the staff also thinking that it's going to be so much more work, right? When in reality, what we're finding with our first kind of proof of concept kind of beta group that we rolled out, they are all, it took 6 months for them to be happier, but they are all so much happier now. Like, they are not in ticket email hell anymore. Like, ticket email hell is gone. It's absolutely gone. The biggest issue I'm having with staff is they're freaking out to the point of some of them threatening to quit about this. This is a university, just so you all know. Because they're going to now have to work in TDX, which is basically our ticketing system, and in Azure DevOps, right? They're going to have to work in both those systems for different things, and explaining to them that we're trying to reduce ticket email hell by doing, ADO and Agile. They're not getting it.
Well, thanks for asking, Ben. It looks like there's a little bit more there. It's good to know. Anything to follow up, Ben, from that question?
You're on mute.
Yeah, you kids and your new technology. Hey, Callie, have the teams that took a while but are now embracing it, have they shared their successes with those who are struggling?
Oh yeah. And we're actually on next Monday, the 27th, kicking off our multi-Scrum teams. Right now, we've just had one Scrum team, and it's been extremely successful. And we're spreading out those it's just boring to you. But we're going to have 3 teams with advocates on every team. But the other team, the new people coming in are just kicking and screaming. They're just kicking and screaming. And the administrators, because we're trying to bring the application system administrators along the ride, and they're just freaking out because of the ADO stuff, right? They just want to remain in ticket email hell.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go back to the hand raised priority.
What,
All right.
he gave
Kate?
up on this?
No, I think it's Kate's turn. I could,
okay.
if you got an hour, I could keep talking.
All right, Kate, and then Elliot, and then back to Ben. Kate.
All right, so some of you know I'm rolling out the Agile transformation in my firm, and similar to what Kali's talking about, you have those pockets, right? Like each one of my business units is run by a partner. So it's almost run by its own little fiefdom by a VP. Each one has a different personality. Some of them are on board, some of them are not. But the biggest thing I'm finding as I'm talking to that level of stakeholders is ensuring that they understand that Agile is not about IT. It's not about implementation. It's about their business outcomes and their value. And I try to tie it back to the company values. This is a top-down organization who has a nice little value out there that says empower our people. So I ask a lot of power questions when I'm talking to them. I am like, they'll explain to me that they have this rigid process and they have to sign off on this and they have to sign off on working agreements. You can't do that at the team level. And I usually ask the question, how do you feel that is a good response to empower our people? Or how do you feel that affects our value, empower your people? And it makes them think. So I challenge business with coming up with an agile leadership team. So you tell me, business, what do you want us to achieve? What outcomes do you want us to work on? So from that stakeholder level, I was like, you give me people. I want that team to be 90% business, which I think really shocked them because they thought it was all about IT. So just kind of shifting the conversation, elevating it to value, what business is going to get out of it, and then challenging them back with their own value statements, empower our people. So, and it's understanding the organization. They are definitely top down. So it's interesting at times, but we're getting wins. And every time we get a win, we're advertising that win. So we kind of just put it out there right on the cube, which is our company intranet, and we talk about the win and that Agile is part of that win. So they understand that it's a mindset shift. Can't talk today, words.
I have a question of just a quick follow-up question on that though. Is your IT department an IT department? Because what I'm referencing is the fact that these are very distributed teams that are now being centralized.
It's exactly what we're doing. We are an IT team that belonged. Business 5 years ago owned development. There was no IT organization.
Are these developers across campus are all reporting directly to their business units in silos?
Ours were too. And then we said we were going to become an IT group and they were lined up with engagement teams. So business was like, well, they still belong to me. I owned them. So now we're moving to IT centralized where they no longer own them. So we're divorcing that function. So business is freaking out because they're going, now I don't have direct access to a developer. So we're in that transition. It's been very challenging.
Yeah, unfortunately for us, that they ixnayed that, and they now have a dotted line to IT. So they're still in those silos. We're trying to
we're trying to break that dotted line, and it's a lot harder than it looks.
No, we have a dotted line though.
Yeah.
So their solid line is still to their business unit.
Right, and we shifted that solid line to IT, dotted line to them, and we're still running into issues. So it's interesting.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Elliot?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Well, there's just so much to unpack there. The reason I raised my hand to start with was to do with the basic nature of the challenge, right? How do we discuss the benefits with various people? I think one of the reasons that some people might be acting as if they had never heard any of this before is because they're genuinely freaked out. They are genuinely scared. A lot of the way that people interact with one another these days comes from a negative kind of psychosocial place, and people are justifiably scared, right? I think, if we get on our high horse as agilists and we say, oh yeah, we're empirical, we know because of the last 25 years what works, trust me, that's not going to work with people necessarily, right? We need to kind of diffuse the situation preemptively, and I think there's not going to be one single languaging. that's going to get matters across, right? Okay, so yes, they're scared. Why are they scared? What's motivating the fear? Right? Are they afraid that somehow they're going to be cut out of the loop? Are they going to be, are they afraid that they're going to be reorganized out of a job? You know, what exactly, or they just, do they not like the principles of transparency that we espouse? Maybe they're more comfortable hanging out back in their silo. What exactly is at issue here? And it's probably not just one thing. It's probably a syndrome of things that together just freak people the hell out, right? I'm always on the lookout for different ways of languaging things that can help people move past that fear and be more adventurous and be like, yes, look, we're all about safety. Safety is our top priority, as a matter of fact. We want you to be safe. And so that's why I love this question so much, even though it seems like sort of an obvious and perennial question. The reason that we would ask it is because we're trying to improve how we get the message across to people with different concerns. So I'll just lower my hand there because I talk too much.
Thanks. Ben, your hand's still up.
Yeah. Yeah, great topic, and topic that, as Alex said, comes up all the time. I think we need to switch 180 degrees sometimes how we discuss this. In other words, we're talking about what are the benefits of Agile, and I think we need to start, and this is what really drew me to Path to Agility, is what's the problem we're trying to solve before we start selling the solution. So that idea, especially, I love the idea that you're working with the high levels and talking with them about what's the problem we're trying to solve, what business outcome is most important to you, and then relating what we're talking about implementing and how that feeds back to what their needs are. And in general, we talked about this in our small group, starting off by not jumping into Agile speak really seems to help. You know, in other words, things like, we're not here to do more work, we're here to do more of the right work, right? Do you learn as you go along? We're trying to create a system where we can adapt to your learning instead of setting up a big project and just doing that. We want to have transparency and inspection and adaptability. When I talk to developers, just asking them, have you ever had work you did get thrown out because it turned out it wasn't what people wanted? You know, and that resonates with developers. So then asking leadership, how did you like paying for that stuff that they threw out? You know, all those kind of conversations never talk about Agile, never talk about any of the frameworks. So that's what I'm learning is a good way to start.
You're muted.
Good. Yeah, when the host is muted, then you got some problems. I was thinking, and by the way, thanks for contributing that, Ben. Really good reference about like the goals and are we alignment. It got me thinking because when I hear that a little bit, Callie, someone's like, well, you know, why are we doing this? Or I don't need to do this. Or, and you're kind of thinking, where's this coming from? Because I thought everyone's on board like the last 2 years. It reminded me when Ben mentioned that, it reminded me of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Those of you who remember already know it. In the middle is inattention to results. And that's that frustrating thing, like, are we not all on the same page? Are we not going the same way? But if you look underneath it, that inattention to results is caused by a lack of commitment. That's kind of what I realized, like, yeah, it might be they're not really in this. And then the issue is essentially you got to back up underneath that and say, have you all not had do you not feel like you had input into this decision? Are you not in agreement with this decision? Because you kind of have to remember you mine for conflict as a response to that, you know, lack of commitment. So I'm going to mine for conflict and go there like, sorry. And there's times I've done this unintentionally, like, they're like, yeah, Scrum's dumb. I'm like, yeah, I agree. Like, what do you mean? Like, I wouldn't force this on you if you don't think you need it. Doesn't sound like you think you need it. And they're looking around like, yeah, no one ever really asked it. And so you kind of went there that that's what the root cause underneath some of that is. So might be interesting to kind of think through that and then unearth some interesting conversations and see where they go.
Hey, love that book. I hadn't even heard of that book. Every time I talk to you, Scott, I end up with like 5 books on my list.
It's not my fault. Good people recommend them to me, and then I end up. And Ben's the latest victim of that.
I mean, it's so right on just looking at them really fast. Holy moly.
Oh boy, yeah, it's solid. For those who haven't gone through 5Ds, highly recommend it, especially at team level stuff we're talking about earlier. Scott, you have your hand up. Glad you chipping in.
Sure, I'll participate. I could probably talk about the topic and or the person's particular issue for quite a while, so I'll keep it brief. And I'll just say first, I love Patrick Lencioni. He writes great business books. If you make your points or introduce your points and then you tell a story and then you sum up by points, it makes it a very easy read for a business book. And so that's who wrote the 5 Dysfunctions of the Team. One of my recommended books that I talk about, in my top 10 list for anyone that I'm working with is also The Advantage. He wrote that one as well. It's about really paying attention to the health of business versus the technical expertise of business. A lot of businesses put a lot of time and energy into hiring, really smart people with a lot of experience and stuff, but don't put that kind of attention on, a healthy work environment, things like that. And so it really depends. So I'll go back to the question and say, it really depends on the level of person that you're communicating with, right? So first we start with the idea that every human being is completely different from each other, and you have to make a certain level of communication connection based on understanding who you're talking to, what level they're at. I know that in the business I'm in now and the one I'm in previously, it's far more on the manufacturing side than on the software side. And they're very large, very old companies. And so when I'm dealing with people in leadership, they tend to have been there for a very long time and risen to those positions of leadership that they're in by doing something a certain way. So part of what you are as a coach has to end up being a bit of a salesman. Here's what you're doing now. And here are the advantages that you can get if you choose to endure the cost of change management as part of an agile transition, right? Do you want to reduce is cycle time important to you? Do you want to work on reducing that? Is ownership and innovation and all of the there's a whole list of advantages that you can talk about. I'll give you a tip. I have quite a bit of expertise in Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is a tool that has a very powerful REST API, and there's a lot of other tools that within the Microsoft suite that support connectivity to it. Maybe your ticket system is not, but with a little bit of energy and a smart engineer, you might be able to, as part of your refinement process, when you triage an item that comes in, automatically publish it into a team's backlog with a push of a button. So it'd just be a little work on one engineer's part, and that would lean it out a little bit for you. If people, one of their struggles is now we have to work in 2 tools. If you're in one tool and you can publish your ticket so that you're tracking it as a work item, and your other tool make it very easy for them, then it kind of eliminates that argument.
Yeah, we're actually working on that.
Okay.
The integration is, if you've also done that stuff, the integration is very, very messy, and we're having issues with things being not to go into details, but things getting closed out in ADO, right? But they keep getting reopened over in TDX. It's team dynamics, which is a little funky. Unfortunately, it's not ServiceNow. So, but yes, point taken, and we're trying to do that. But I don't think that's the issue, right? That's like an excuse.
Right.
More
the fear and resistance. So
yeah.
I'll give you one more tip. How are you or your people on your staff with doing some light trainings, right? Because if you demystify the terminology by just putting together some intro courses yourself, intro to the Agile mindset, intro to Scrum Foundation, stuff like that. These are things that I use as tools in my tool belt as an enterprise coach. And when I see people that are really struggling just with the terminology or fear or lack of understanding, that putting together some basic training that they can go through. So you're demystifying terms and you're creating a base understanding of what you're doing. And within those, deal with the why somewhat. Here, if you do this is, one of the advantages that comes as a result of it, then it will help you make that connection.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. And then Elliot, did your hand go up?
It did, yeah, thanks. I mean, wow, there's a great deal to unpack there too, but I just wrote down two things that I would be pleased to sort of underscore if nothing else. And one is that to recognize that yes, healthy does trump smart. There are myriad ways to be stupid in a sophisticated way, and I forget whom to credit that quote with. But I think the context was people who think that say ChatGPT is actually sentient, right? And they'll give you all these great reasons why it deserves human rights as a person. No, it's a fucking machine, right? Like, so there are lots of ways to be smart in dumb ways and dumb in smart ways. So yeah, like if you hire someone who's healthy and properly engaged, right, and you constitute your teams well based on that, yeah, it might take them a week longer to get there, but I promise you they'll get there, right? Whereas if you hire people who are merely because they're smart and on the technical ball, that doesn't work, right? You're just going to end up with a lot of competing tiny little atomistic agendas, right? The other thing I want to point out there is that so often people use terminology in a negative way to exclude people, right? We have terms of art as shorthand ways of talking about things with each other because we're experts at it, right? But that's definitely going to put people who aren't already in the in crowd off, because they might legitimately worry that yeah, we're trying to keep something to ourselves, right? There's something hiding behind these terms that we're not letting them into, right? So I really think it's important to diffuse that potential problem, right? And two, as just mentioned, speak in plain language to people, lowering my hand, getting off my soapbox.
Thanks, Elliot. My bad. I thought you were going to make a reference to something. The conversation had ended. We voted to end it and then added a bit more. So for everyone's sake, we'll be watching that. That once we decide not to continue something, the nice thing is, partly when I'm just watching this happen, is I remember in other meetings, like there are things lots of people like to share, but that democratic style, like, hey, we're all just going to vote and see. And I do see some people are voting, but feel free to vote more. And also on having your voice, one, capture any comments or notes. Like if you had some takeaways already today, then add them to like the comments underneath, because we'll output and send those out post class. So if you miss next time, all the any references and things can be saved as an output of the tool, and then it can be sent out to you. So I usually do it when we start the meeting, but I didn't do it this time.
Speaking of output, Scott, Elliot here, a tiny ask to do with the mural boards from our CAL session. Thank you for making those available. I love that we can just pop in and reference those. But I would super love it if we could get PDFs of those, which we're not entitled to do, because I'd like to not be worried that Mural is going to get DOS attacked just at the point where I need it, so.
Fair enough. I will put that in the backlog. Yeah, way back we used to, but it's a manual process, and Mural seems to be doing nothing to help with that. But I will put it in there, and I'll bring it up with Jessica. Thanks for letting me know.
Any help greatly appreciated. Thank you, Scott.
Sure thing, Elliot. That was the other one I had in here, was just any besides making comments, takeaways, action items, and adding them so everyone gets them. Any feedback on these sessions themselves would be really helpful. Any input, because again, it's a service to you. So if we can help serve you better, then let us know. Right? We talked about accommodative and assertive. This is a good opportunity to be assertive. Like, I think it'd be great if we did, right? At least it's ideas, and then we can put it in the backlog and kind of discuss it. But without ideas, we just take some guesses. And I've been surprised at the guesses that, like, we all like, but I didn't know. But now it'd be nice if you can guide some of that too. So if you have any feedback, there's a card, I think. If it doesn't work, let me know. And with that, we'll pick up the last topic. Anything else on that? All right, who had this one? Best practice of running the monthly retro? I know this one will be a quick one, but at least we can get a conversation going. Whose was this? Hey, Chang.
Right. It's really our team are super busy with the running the production full speed, and I recently the lead talked to me and just like want to restart the monthly retro that apparently got paused like before I joined the team, and I was just like curious, like what's the benefit of doing this with the quite a packed schedule, and I don't want people feel like this is like a formality type of thing. And there must be a reason that they paused the monthly ritual back then. I was told it's like just because the busy production schedule, but it's supposed to be something that foster productivity, I assume. So just want to make sure I kickstart this thing right this time, so we don't we don't have this as a like taking folks' time. Instead, we help people to be more productive and get things out of it.
Sunny, your hands up.
Yeah. So one of the things, so retros, there's two things, right? They can become very repetitive, very, very quickly. So I would encourage you to go out there and there's several resources, but find multiple templates for the retrospectives. Keep it fresh. I would say probably start with some of the very smaller templates, just a simple, what worked, what didn't work, those types of things to kind of gain their trust with that. And then also, you're going to have to bring the energy. It is one of those where they will feed off of your energy. If you approach it as, okay, this is something we have to do, they're going to pick up on that right away. It's so funny. I have one Scrum Master that literally does 10 push-ups at his desk right before the retro begins, and then he jumps up and he's like full of energy, and he actually like brings it on because he tries to get himself all psyched up for that, because they do, your group would feed off of that. And then the last little thing I would say is, if you can, and it's a monthly, so you can adjust the quantity, but try to come up with at least one action item, one actionable item that you guys are going to, not a general, well, we want to make this better. Well, how are you going to make that better? What's the one thing that you're going to do? And then that also helps you as you start your next retro. Hey guys, we committed to doing this. Did we do it, and did it work?
Good stuff,
Yeah.
Sunny.
Thanks.
Thanks. And Ben?
Yeah, I think the reason people stop having them is they don't see the benefit to it. And I want to plus one on what Sunny just said. First of all, make sure in those retros you celebrate victories too. So it's not just a complaint session, but also exactly what Sunny said, get your list of things you think you can get better, but treat it just like we do our sprints, right? Find one thing that's the thing that the group wants to work on. And then at the next retro, start by saying, how do we do on the last thing? And not just jump into all new things. I've had teams put something on their sprint board that is the thing they came out of the retro with, so that every day at stand up, they just said, hey, by the way, we said during this sprint we were going to work on this. How are we doing on it? Just to keep it in front of people. But the goal, I think, is to show them that what they're doing is working, and that probably works best if you just do a little at a time.
Right.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Awesome stuff. Scott?
Clicking all over the place because I just stuck a link in there. So yeah, one of the so I've been through this a million times, right? Both as a Scrum Master and a coach, and coaching coaches and everything. And retrospectives are one of the first things that I see teams drop because they get bored with them. And so the link I put in there is just one particular book that I've read. You could, if you're not a book person, you can find all kinds of ideas just by Googling around. If you start every retrospective so that every single one is different in some small way, agile games, activities, just silly stuff to get people to relax and engage, they'll find that, it's a more enjoyable team bonding experience. And once people's minds are loose, they're more likely to, engage with the actual activity of continuous improvement. Obviously, I'm a book person, so I think my favorite line in the Phoenix Project, if you've read that book, is really speaks, and it's a selling point for me when I'm talking about how important continuous improvement is, right? The line was, let me see if I can get it right. The only thing more important than doing work is improving work. And it's a universal truth, right? If you're just going along and doing work and getting stuff done, great. But if you're improving the way you work, then you're getting, as a result, getting more engagement, getting more work done, getting more innovation, all of those things. And so always value retrospectives and find ways to keep them fresh. That's my message.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. And then looks like one last, we might be able to squeeze in Sunny. Oh, sorry, Scott. No, where, someone, Elliot, did you pull your hand down?
Oh, yeah, no, I thought you were going to pick me, so I just lowered my hand.
Oh, then go ahead, Elliot. Yeah, and we'll see if we can squeeze in
no.
Sunny afterwards.
No, I love what's just been said about this. You know, one game-changing idea for me was one that you suggested, Scott, which is to make sure that those retro items, those action items, actually end up in the backlog, because they are as important as anything else that we might want to do, right? And in fact, the retro is the most important ceremony that we do in Scrum. Even if we're not specifically doing Scrum, we still want to do retrospectives, right? Because otherwise, I mean, that's the very essence of inspecting, adapting, and improving. If we don't have that conversation, then we can't do it. And we should take the outputs of that conversation as seriously as we take any business ask, right? You know, so yes, just subordinate to actually delivering is improving the way we deliver. I 100% agree with that. And we're not alone in making retrospectives fresh, and of course we should do that. I don't have a list immediately at hand, like it's kind of in my backlog to create the list of sites that have fun and interesting retrospective ideas, but there are those sites out there. I recently had a person that I'm coaching suggest a really cool one to me, which if I could go find it, I will send around. But there's certainly, you don't have to do it yourself. Like you don't have to invent like from scratch all interesting retro ideas. They're out there for you. So, you know, give them a try, see what kinds of ones work for your team, what kinds of ones don't. And then let them tell you how well those are working, what kinds of ones they like, what kinds of ones they don't.
Awesome. Thanks, Elliot. Sunny, I wish we could have squeezed you in, but I know you'll be back. Thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been great. Hope to see you all again at the next session. There's a topic in the alumni. We'll talk to you all soon.
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Good to see you, Carol. Thanks for coming, Chang. Good to see you, Sunny.
Thank you.
See you, Elliot.
Thanks, everyone.
You bet. Thanks for coming, Kelly. And let me end the recording.
Oh, good point.